Hey everybody, it's Jeremy again. I am back with another video for the Life by the Square Inch series here on the Erasmus Expeditions. Now, today's going to be a first for me. I've been crafting terrain and miniatures and things of that nature for my games for some time now, several years at least. And I've never really done any videos for it yet. Videoing while crafting is kind of something that has always been very difficult for me. But I've really enjoyed watching a lot of other channels that have focused around terrain building and things. So I'm going to start venturing into that a little bit more. Now, the project that I'm going to be showing you today is called the Golem of the Dishonored Ancestors. And the idea was that there was a bunch of bodies and unmarked graves, as well as a cemetery, that were left behind in a great war that was fought in this particular area in the campaign. And the evil spirit energy and the unrest kind of amalgamated into this collection of these tombstones and bad energy. So let's get started. So I started with an aquarium piece that I got at the pet store. It was a dragon. It was meant to bubble air, I think, through it. The body was a little too defined for what I was trying to go for. So I cut the head and the legs and arms off of it. And just use those, and then just set the body aside to be used for a later project at some point. Luckily, my wife actually came across a toy from the dollar store that was an alien, I believe, but the style of the hands and the legs and some of the texture matched the dragon really, really well, both in size and in number of toes and things like that. So I removed those as well and kind of set them aside. Because I wanted this thing to have almost an alien anatomy. It was supposed to be comprised of tombstones and statues and things of that nature, so it shouldn't just look natural. I used DM Scotty's method for the body. These are toilet paper rolls, kind of stuffed with TP for structure, and then the PVA glue and water kind of paper mache technique over the outside with paper towels. One of them is kind of bent into the other, and they both were crushed ahead of time to give them less of a cylindrical shape and something that was a little more natural. You can see that I started to texture the whole thing after attaching the head to the end and the various limbs. I started to texture the whole thing with hot glue to try to give it kind of a swirled pattern that would match this ethereal energy that was kind of supposed to hold all of these tombstones together. I also made a base here out of cardboard and hot glue that would give him something to kind of stand on and stabilize him a bit. Here he is from the top. You can see some of the limbs aren't attached yet. And I was toying with the notion of giving him a polearm weapon, so you can see a chopstick kind of sitting in his front legs there, but I didn't end up using them. I wanted him to be covered in tombstones, so I kind of gathered a whole bunch of Asian-style beads and jewelry, fastenings, as well as tombstones and stuff that I ordered from online. And I clipped off the rings and things of that nature, and then just started going crazy, gluing them all in place with hot glue. I am of the crafter mentality, the waste not, want not. So this piece is actually the filter that was inside this aquarium piece. So this would kind of aerate the water and make bubbles. So I just carved some fake kanji symbols into it with a tool. It was going to be another tombstone. So here I kind of, you can see this ridge along his back. I wanted to give him something that made him a little bit more menacing, a little bit more like a creature. So I glued this ridge of these tombstones kind of in a spine, if you will, down his back. You can see some of the other various tombstones and other things glued in place. You can see one here I attached to the base just to kind of tie him into his base a little bit better. A bunch of beads that you can see from the craft store, the hobby store, real cheap. But they all felt kind of Asian. And I just kind of had to go crazy, just covering the majority of his body with these and hot glue texture. I kind of carried the hot glue tendrils, if you will, kind of up and over some of these beads so that it looked like this spiritual energy was almost like a net kind of wrapping around these things and holding them all together. The one section that I had an issue with designing was his butt. Eventually what I came up with was to kind of cut the notches so that it was cylindrical. And then I took this medical tubing that my son had come home with when he came home on oxygen. This stuff was clean, but I inserted a coat hanger through it to kind of give it some rigidity, and then bent them into these arcing tendrils, attached this one to the base so that it looked like it was coming up out of the ground. And then I kind of tied wire to the various streams whenever they would cross each other to kind of add some stability to them, a little bit of structure so that they weren't quite so weak. And then I covered the entire thing with hot glue, again to kind of carry this energy texture throughout the whole thing. Here you can see one of the wire ties at one of the junctures. So here he is, almost complete, I believe. It looks like there's still some texturing that has to be done on his tail tendrils. One of the things that I really wanted to include was a tombstone that was kind of in the process of being sucked up by one of these tendrils and added to the entirety of his body. So I drilled a hole through one of the tombstones, ran a piece of wire through it, and used that to add to one of the tendrils, and then just kind of did the hot glue texture up and around it, and then had it add to the entirety of it. Here's a close-up view of the texture of the hot glue. And this is him pretty much finished, I believe. You can see a couple of the other beads and stuff up near the top of the tail that also look like they're getting kind of sucked up to him. This took a while to put together, but it was fairly easy once the initial plan was put together. Here he right before he was primed, which should be the next shot. I definitely failed in taking as many pictures through the process of painting, but I went with white as a primer, spray primer, because I wanted the base undercoat of him to be very vibrant and to stand out. And whenever you're doing colors that you want to be really, really bright, a white base coat is almost always best to start with. So like I said, I didn't take as many pictures through the painting process, unfortunately. And here you can see I undercolored him with my airbrush, blues and purples, so that it kind of had this spiritual energy look to it. And then I went back and painted everything with successive dry brushes of gray. I did touches of green to kind of add a little bit of age to these tombstones, and then went back with a vibrant blue color to kind of go over these tendrils to tie it all together. So that was the Golem of the Dishonored Ancestors. As you can see, it was not a small miniature. It was pretty good sized when it was all said and done. As I said, a lot of the idea for the body came from DM Scotty, so thank you very much, Scotty. But it was a really memorable encounter, and it was a lot of fun to kind of put this on the table and scare the crap out of my players. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was a build that taught me a lot. So yeah, I guess this, like I said, this is the first video of my crafting. It's been an entry into the Life by the Square Inch series here on the Erasmus Expeditions. So until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.